Scrunchies and spandex, Jane Fonda, and more, American Horror Story is bringing us back to 1984.
Some backstory first. We open in 1970 at Camp Redwood, where we're introduced to some horny camp counselors. We hear Mr. Jingles Keys, who, if you watch the trailer, seems to be our main bad guy this season. Once the two counselors convince the third to take part in the festivities, the two are horribly cock-blocked by a knife through the skull.
Yikes. Jingles finishes the third girl off by taking an ear as a trophy. After laying out the bodies like an art project, Jingle Crip walks out that motherfucker. Back to the good old 1984 with a timeless 80s dance montage in the LA aerobics studio, where we meet our main five: Xavier, Montana, Ray, Chet, and Brooke. After a very erotic aerobics class, Montana introduces herself to Brooke while naked in the shower.
As one does.
When Montana and Brooke join the boys in the lobby, Xavier mentions the Night Stalker, a serial killer on the loose that stabs someone almost 40 times. Chet introduces himself to Brooke, and Brooke gets the fanny flutters.
Xavier, the method actor / aerobics instructor, informs the group that he's working as a counselor at the newly reopened Camp Redwood for the summer to escape the chaos of the LA Night Stalker and the 1984 Olympics. Montana gives Brooke her number in case she's interested. In counseling, of course.
Brooke gets attacked by the Night Stalker, who randomly knows she has jewelry, but flees after being hit in the head with a pan, but not before telling her he'll find her again. With the Night Stalker still on the loose, Brooke decides to join the bunch on their adventure to Camp Redwood. We learn in the banter in the van that Chet was going to be in the Olympics, but got disqualified for drug use.
Then we meet Patrick Swayze's brother as his creepy gas station attendant named Ed, who, after hearing where they're heading, advises them not to go, in a very creepy way. Xavier uses what's called a payphone, for all you youngins, to check his voice messages. Here we hear an angry message from what we assume is Xavier's ex-lover, saying he will find him.
While back on the road, Xavier runs over this guy, who can't remember his name. Brooke makes them take the disoriented hitchhiker with them. When they arrive at the Camp Redwood, they are greeted by the owner, Margaret. Brooke tells Margaret about the hitchhiker, who is then brought to the infirmary, where we meet Nurse Rita.
Margaret shows the counselors to their cabins, where we meet Chef Birdie, who mentioned she was around when Margaret attended the camp 14 years ago. Margaret tells the counselors that the girls shower in the AM, the boys shower in the PM. Revealing she's a religious zealot, she believes she's doing God's work against the world's filth, further mentioning she stood side by side with Richard Keating in his crusade against Larry Flint. Her husband died, which she mentions in passing, leaving her his fortune to reopen the camp as a godly place for kids to escape.
Around the campfire, Nurse Rita tells the counselors about the Camp Redwood massacre that happened 14 years ago, where we get an origin story about our Mr. Jingles, aka Benjamin Richter, a Vietnam War vet who collected the ears of his kills, who after being discharged from the army became a groundskeeper at the camp when Margaret attended 14 years ago. Jingles snaps one day, killing all the female counselors except one, who Margaret reveals was her. She says through the power of Jesus she was able to remain quiet while her ear was being sawed off. She testified against Mr. Jingles, locking him up in an insane asylum. She hopes that by reopening Camp Redwood, she can turn a horrible memory into a positive one.
Later on, the hitchhiker awakens in the night and checks himself out in the mirror, revealing that he too is missing an ear. Brooke goes to check on the hitchhiker and reveals to him that they brought him to Camp Redwood, and he is not happy.
Back at the cabin, Glee's Mr. Schuster joins the cast as Trevor, a dancer cut from Jane Fonda's workout tape due to his large, distracting package. Montana takes notice and lures him into skinny dipping in the lake, breaking the fornicating rule Margaret set in place. Trevor takes a deep dive on Montana's private parts, and she notices an impending storm and some onlooking headlights.
We're then introduced to Dr. Hopple as she enters the insane asylum where alarms are ringing and patients are running wild. We learn that 3 hours earlier, Mr. Jingles strangled an orderly while escaping and letting all the other patients out with him. Dr. Hopple then finds a newspaper clipping of the story of Camp Redwood's reopening inside of Mr. Jingles' cell. Jingles then makes his way over to our pal Ed at the gas station, where he crushes him with a car, stomps on his head, takes his keys, and steals his truck.
Back at the cabin, Chet throws a can at Ray in full roid rage after watching the opening ceremony at the Olympics. Ray cuts his hand and Brooke goes after him to help him with his cut. They share a foreshadowing moment and Brooke goes in search of bandages. On her search, she reunites with the hitchhiker who is hanging from the door, dead. She sees a hooded figure in the window watching her, who we can only assume is Mr. Jingles. We see Mr. Jingles go after Brooke with his jingling keys. The chase is juxtaposed with the Olympic opening ceremony.
A now mud-covered Brooke tells the counselors what she saw, and when they go looking, of course they find nothing. Margaret shows up to usher them back to their cabin in a questionably similar trench coat.
Brooke later hears the payphone ringing, and she wakes up Switchblade Montana to tell her about it. When Montana refused to go check it out, Brooke decides to investigate on her own. Picking up the payphone, she hears jingling keys again and turns to find the Night Stalker. Welcome back! So this season of American Horror Story is 1984 themed, as we showed you in the opening.
That's true.
That's factual.
I didn't even know you fucking started.
I said we were recording. Okay, so as we saw the opening scene, we got some campers that get slaughtered by supposedly Mr. Jingles, the Vietnam war vet. And like any 80s slasher film, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Mike Myers, we learned that serial killers don't like promiscuous teenagers.
No, they do not.
If you have sex, you're guaranteed to die.
Yeah, that's a rule.
That is a rule.
I love the 80s slasher theme here. I hope it sticks throughout the whole season. You know that American Horror Story, they've been known to just flip script right in the middle of the season.
Go off the rails, yeah.
They could go in any direction whatsoever, but I'm really enjoying this kind of goofy, corny 80s stuff.
Yeah, it's even the way it's filmed, like that. Even the credit like sequence in the beginning is just like you'll see grainy video. Even the box set theme, which is like center cut, old style SD filming.
Yeah, and they've gotten already in the first episode a couple of major references. I mean, right off the bat, you got Friday the 13th. That's obvious.
Yeah, where they go to Camp Redwood or Camp Crystal Lake.
Yeah. My favorite Halloween, as soon as you got up to the psych ward, that was my favorite part. I was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, straight out of a movie of 1970. Yeah.
And it's basically like Mike Myers escaping the psych ward and going out on revenge.
Yeah. We have elements of Jason where he's like slashing camp counselors with a knife.
Yeah, there's a lot of gore in this, and
there's a lot of gore, but it's cool. It's less creepy and more in your face.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's not. I haven't been creeped out yet, like American Horror Story can get.
It'll get there.
I'm sure it will. There has not been a man completely clad in leather yet, so that's good. That's usually something that we see. So
full bodysuit of leather.
Yeah, we have plenty of familiar faces in here.
Yeah, Emma Robert returns as not the bitch character.
Yeah, that's getting a lot of talk. Like she's the goody two shoes.
Yeah, the naive virgin of a slasher movie.
Yeah,
because there's always there's that slutty girl, which is the blonde Montana that we know.
Yeah.
There's the dark haired version. Like the blonde always has to be the slut, by the way, in the movies. You ever notice that?
Yeah. And then you got Chet, buff guy. I don't know if you knew this, but Gus Kenworthy, the actor, is actually an Olympian.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's a cool fun fact.
Who apparently acts. I think we both commented he wasn't the best actor.
Nope.
At least so far.
So far, he's not great. But that explains it if he's not an actor.
Well, he bills himself as one. So.
Yeah. Our favorite son of Satan returns, Cody Fern, but he's looking more like Richard Simmons' son this season.
Yeah, he's very, I guess you could say, fabulous. Flamboyant, that's the word. If you want to stick on Xavier for a little bit.
Yeah.
Right away, he kind of weirds me out. I become suspicious of him right off the bat. He's like, oh, let's all go to this camp.
Yeah, he's the one that introduces it. Yeah.
You quickly learn, like, something else is going on with him.
Yeah.
He's at the payphone. Now, I didn't hear it 100%, but some people are saying that he was on the phone with the Night Stalker.
Yeah, there is a theory of that because when Brooke gets attacked by the Night Stalker in her apartment, he says, "I will find you. Satan will show me the way."
Yeah.
Now, being as last season talked so much about Satan, there might be some crossover there that we might see later on in the season. But also, he keeps saying, "I will find you," which he also says to Xavier in his voice message, "I will find you." So
you can't just take your dick and walk away. That was the line that stuck out right there.
So we know that Xavier, and we assume that Montana, they both swing both ways, because we know that Xavier and Montana used to date, but we also know Xavier likes boys as well.
Yeah. Xavier also said that he's a method actor, and I think they said that his role that he recently got was of a serial killer.
Yeah, he studied under Stella Adler, who was a famous acting coach at the time.
So if he's method, I mean, maybe he's studying Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker.
Maybe taking it a little too far.
I mean, the guy found him pretty quick at the end of the show. I mean, you see the Night Stalker right there within a night.
Yeah.
So
that's another like cheesy element to this show already, is like all of a sudden the Night Stalker's there, and like,
yeah, well, a lot happened. Like, this doesn't seem like the whole story here, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, more is going to play out. Obviously, lots of people are going to die, I think, in episode 2. I'm predicting a lot of casualties.
Yeah.
I think, like, I could see Chet going down. I could see Ray. I could see Montana. Mm-hmm. Maybe even Brooke. We'll see what happens with Xavier.
There seems to be, in the beginning, there's a little flirting with Chet and Brooke, but she also has a moment with Ray.
Yeah.
And if you're sticking to the classic 80s horror slasher, the significant other of the Goody Two-Shoes virgin is always the first to go. So one of those two might be...
Yeah. Then you also have Margaret Booth, who somehow survived
through the power of Jesus.
Through the power of Jesus, and then stayed quiet while getting her ear cut off. Mm-hmm. And she's already very creepy.
Yeah, she's very self-righteous. She's there to get rid of the filth in the world.
Yeah, she's clearly up to something. Something's going on, maybe between her and Mr. Jingles.
Maybe. Some people think that she could possibly be the killer, and Mr. Jingles is coming back for revenge on her.
Yeah. Well, she said her husband died, and she has his fortune.
Yeah.
Who knows how that happened?
Yeah, we don't know how her husband died. I mean, they allude to similarities, like when she shows up later in that trench coat to escort the counselors back to their cabin. So there's like different things. Also, if you notice, when Jingles gets out of the asylum and he goes to the gas station attendant Ed, and even the orderly in the asylum, he strangles the orderly and takes his keys, never takes his ear. And he doesn't take Ed's ear either. And that was like a signature move from Mr. Jingles in the 1971. He put an ear on a string like Daryl from Walking Dead.
Yeah. Maybe that's not for him. Maybe that's for somebody else. Yeah.
I also like that they play up... first of all, the guy that plays Mr. Jingles, or Benjamin Richter, was previously Twisty, the clown in American Horror Story, the subject of most of my nightmares.
He played...
Ed Gein in Hotel.
John Wayne Gacy. Didn't he play John Wayne Gacy?
Oh, maybe that's it.
I think it was John Wayne Gacy.
I love that Mr. Schuster comes in as Trevor. He's creep. Complete creep.
I didn't listen to the one thing you just said.
It's my life. So let's wrap up our theories that we have so far. So one theory is that Margaret Booth is in fact the killer, either now or from back then.
Yeah, Xavier is definitely involved in some way. Maybe they've already had some kind of interaction. So we know Xavier, at least I believe, is involved in some way.
I think he is too.
He mentions to Margaret, well, Margaret's talking to all of the counselors, and she says, drowning is the #1 death among U.S. campers. And Xavier says, what's second? And kind of gives her a look, and she looks at him and walks away. So
there's a lot of play in there.
Yeah, there's already some weird vibes between the two of them, and
All right.
I think that a lot is going to happen in the second episode. I think
so
the
too.
majority of the main characters are going to be dead. A few of them will stick around, and we'll have some sort of big reveal here.
Yeah. I think
already
already
the whole story around.
Yeah, I think so much has already happened in the first episode that I'm kind of like, where do you go from here? Like, they're either just gonna eliminate everybody, like you said, and start like a new storyline from there.
Which they did in Apocalypse, right?
Yeah, it was like 3 episodes in, and then you're like, what is going on?
Yeah, there's also we're introduced to Chef Birdie really quick, and didn't have her. I mean, she was weird looking too.
Yeah, if she's not a significant character, why bring her in there? And why mention that she was around when Margaret went to camp there 14 years ago?
Yeah, and she also wasn't killed.
Yeah. Another thing, when the hitchhiker looks at himself in the mirror and he also doesn't have an ear, that is before Jingles gets out.
Yeah. Well,
and that's present day, so it's not...
When they first hit him, he like grabs Brooke's arm and was like, "You gotta believe me, I tried."
Yeah.
What was he getting at there?
No idea, and they have no context either of what the hell he's talking about. Yeah. And
maybe he tried to get the camp shut down and Margaret got his ear?
Maybe. Something like that.
Throwing shit against the wall.
Also, Xavier makes a point to be like, look, he has other scars on him. Yeah. That wasn't from me hitting him.
Yeah. Xavier also did not give a shit.
No. Didn't want to take him. And Brooke was the only one that mentioned that the hitchhiker was in the van when they first arrived there.
Yeah. I felt bad for Ed.
Yeah. He came in and left real quick.
Yeah. I liked it.
He
tried to warn him. He said everybody's gonna die.
He came off really creepy, which like is also another thing like in every horror movie ever, and this is not just like an 80s slasher.
Yeah, they're in the van, they're driving
wherever they're
going to.
Oh, that reminds me of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because they're driving in a van, they pick up a hitchhiker, and when they stop at the gas station, they're like, "You shouldn't be around these parts.
You shouldn't be here.
You shouldn't be here. Not away. Camp Redwood."
Should have never reopened that place.
That was the last time I saw Andy Dufresne.
I guess that's what we were getting at.
Alright, so closing out this breakdown, we think Xavier has something to do with it. We think Margaret has something to do with it. We think all of them may die in the next episode. We think Jingles may be redeemed. His character might be redeemed, or we are overthinking it, and he could just massacre everybody.
I think he's just a murderer.
We're going to watch the second episode soon. Can't wait to see what happens. Maybe everybody dies. We don't know. Yeah, but hopefully you'll come back and theorize with us. Send us some notes, comments, Episode 2 comes out tonight. We're going to watch it, podcast.
My arm is...
Tomorrow. It's okay. You see that? He was about to take me out. Now we're a part of the story. Are you working with Mr. Jingles?
Mr. Jingles.
Mr. Bojangles.
Mr. Bojangles.
All right. That's a wrap.
Bye.
Bye. I'm leaving that. Do you have a name?
Balls Deep.
Welcome back to Balls.
Balls Deep. Tonight we get Balls Deep in American Horror Story episode.
Oh, my Atlanta.